I'm gonna turn it down a little bit.
All right.
Okay, so
This
is the first podcast. Basically a podcast, more of a video.
Yeah.
Little talk about
Sharing
our
thoughts.
sharing our thoughts.
Yeah.
Sharing our thoughts. Two little albums, big albums, more like big albums, about John Lennon's Imagine and The Clash's London Calling.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna start off talking about John Lennon's Imagine. It's the one that's playing right now, and we'll talk about it a little bit. We'll get it nice and short up. Get a little score for it, and then we have a special guest to join us for The Clash's London Calling. Someone else that listened to the album as well, give us their thoughts on it. So Jaden, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so we can just start with Imagine, the first song. I thought it had like a kind of like funky kind of start to it, but overall it kind of like tied together. It was really good. It kind of had like some kind of like, I want to say like communist kind of tones.
Yeah,
with it,
I'd say so.
With it saying like, imagine a world with no like religion, no like possessions.
Yeah, 100%.
Which kind of takes that like idealistic Marxist kind of communist utopia kind of idea, which I thought was kind of neat. Just seeing that in such a big like song during, especially when the time that was wrote,
exactly
coming into the Cold War. So
it's such an interesting song, and that title track, Imagine, is just such a good opening to this album, because the rest of the album kind of plays out with loads of different topics. There's one song later in the album that we'll get to that really kind of encapsulates the ideas that John is kind of talking about in this album, and a couple other songs in here that kind of, like you said, tie back into Imagine, which in all truth, it's just, it's giving people some truth, which is kind of the basis of this album. So first half, what'd you think?
So the first half of the album I thought was really strong, especially with Imagine. That I think that is the strongest track on the song, or the strongest song on the track.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's the best sounding. I liked Oh Yoko as like purely sound, but with the words and the sound, I did like it the best.
Yeah, I think it has a lot going for it. I thought, when I was listening to the first half, I was getting a little bit bored. I'm gonna be honest. It wasn't for me. It wasn't perfect. I thought that there was a lot of music mixing and things that could have been a little bit better. Right now, we're listening to the second side of the album, which I think came around a little bit better. That's got Give Me Some Truth and Oh Yoko and stuff like that, which I liked a little bit better. I think the first half was really strong with Imagine, but the rest of it was a little bit forgetful.
Yep.
So I'd put that into factor. I think personally I'd prefer to hear John and Paul composing again, but in 71, after he left and he released this album, they were having a few little feuds over stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later.
But yeah, definitely with like the first side definitely was more like experimental with the sounds, because you go from Give Me Some Truth Imagine, which then you go into Crippled Inside, which has that piano playing in your right ear.
Oh yeah.
Very fun. It's like the bongo guy in September.
Yeah.
But it's just little like the kind of like saloon type piano, and then you go into Jealous Guy, which is another like slow. But then the second half definitely has that more like coherent kind of one uniform sound throughout the whole thing.
I'd say so. Yeah.
So
yeah, that first half was pretty good. I liked Jealous Guy. Jealous Guy was probably one of the ones I liked on that side. It comes down to it. I'm gonna grab the track list here real quick. Gonna go through it. So when we start off, where are we here? Start off with Imagine, which is right here. Imagine starts right here. We go to Crippled Inside, and then we go down to Jealous Guy, go to It's So Hard, and then we go to I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama, I Don't Want to Die. Those, I feel like all those were very, very repetitive in some sense, but They worked really well. I think that for most of that part of the album, it was just it was something that was easy to listen to. There wasn't anything bad. I don't think there was anything really that bad.
No.
Crippled Inside wasn't my favorite, but it was still a pretty good song. Better than some other albums that I've reviewed in the past. And I think that overall the first half was pretty good. Let's talk about the second half. What do you feel about the second half?
It definitely had a more
I personally
coherent and more like thought out, like not as repetitive, because especially with like I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, it's like the same few lines, and I'm Just a Jealous Guy does very much repeat that chorus a bunch, and with the second half it very much, I feel,
kind of comes through. I like the lyrics a lot on the second half. Oh My Love was gorgeous, really liked it. We were just listening to that one, and then that goes into How Do You Sleep. And How Do You Sleep is a really interesting song, because when Paul released his first solo album before John, he released a bunch of songs, or a couple songs that John took as pokes or jabs at him. And so he got really mad because, when someone's making fun of you on albums, you got to make a response. And this was his response. His response was How Do You Sleep? And one of their producers came in while he was recording How Do You Sleep. He said, John, just stop. You can't say this much about Paul. But later on, John would go on to say that it was all just fun and games. They did this to each other all the time. And it's really interesting to start off with, so Sgt. Pepper took you by surprise, you better see right through that mother's eyes. It's something where it just feels so nostalgic while also so hating. He feels mad, which is something that I don't really see John as super often. Definitely later on in his solo career, he gets more mad. But during the Beatles and also on this first album, this is his first real I'm mad.
Yeah, I definitely felt that like angst and like kind of more like anger, hatred in the album. And especially with like the line, the only thing you do is yesterday. Hard. That line is hard. I love that line. I had no context, but I knew that line was hard. Yeah,
it was hard. Because that line, I don't know if you looked it up later, but that line plays into his song that he wrote for the Beatles early on, which is Yesterday. And then it also references another song that he wrote, which is Another Day. And he's just saying, well, those are the only two contributions you ever had. What did you ever do? And I think that is really interesting.
That makes it
really
better.
Really plays into that. It was pretty good.
Elevates the line a lot for me.
Just the second half, I'd listen to it time and time again. It starts off with "Give Me Some Truth," which is classic. It's another one of his grittier songs, and you can feel that anger again. I think that How on the second side is also really, really good. I downloaded that one to my phone so I can listen to it whenever I need to. And I think that how can I go forward when I don't know which way I'm facing? How can I go forward when I don't know which way to turn? Oh, boy. Jaden sneeze.
Ruined the video.
Jaden sneeze.
Ruined the audio.
No, it's fine. It's all right. We'll leave it in. We'll leave in the Jaden sneeze. But I think How was really encapsulates what he was thinking about when he made this. I think it just kind of really ate into exactly what he wanted to say.
It felt like he was trying to make sense of life, especially after this huge breakup it sounds like he's trying to make sense of life now with his, like, what that's going to do with the relationship with Yoko and how he's going to move forward as a musician. It feels like it really goes into that. I didn't like the song because I abbreviated all the song titles, and then it goes from How Do You Sleep to How.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it tripped me up, so I had to extend it. Only gripe with the song, otherwise really good.
Only gripe with the song. I thought it was going to be same thing here. I thought it was going to be a continuation of How Do You Sleep, but then when I heard it, I was like, this is completely different. And it's going to come on here in a minute. But the ending to that song, How, is perfect in a sense where it changes it from how can I to how can we, and it kind of brings his problems and his future things that he has to deal with to the world. So it kind of just puts everybody in the situation of how, which is really nice. And then finishing off finishing off talking about track by track, we get to
Oh, Yoko.
which honestly took me by surprise.
It very much
It's
did.
a song about him and Yoko and him writing a song about his love, and I was like, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm not a huge Yoko fan, breaking up the Beatles, but this song was really, really good.
It was.
It had a really good feel to it, a little bit melancholy with some of the chords he used, but overall really joyous.
Mhm.
You know, it felt really happy.
It was a very nice, like, sweet song, especially with the context of being for Yoko, and because it's this nice way to end off, very upbeat, very happy sounding, and then it like finishes off this like kind of mini arc, I want to say, where it has like before you go from like Jealous Guy to Oh My Love, and then you have like Oh Yoko, which is like that mini kind of love arc, and it finishes off in a very beautiful, nice tone.
Especially finishing off the album on that high note there was just a really good idea. So that kind of finishes a track by track. Overall album coherence, I felt that it kind of morphed really well. It kind of became something else while it went through.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a concept album. It felt more like a track by track kind of album.
Very much so, especially that first half kind of really solidified that track by track
Yeah, definitely.
kind of mindset. With
Yeah, kind of
the
switched
jumpy
around,
jump.
jumped through a couple different ones. But I think overall that the album in its entirety is definitely worth consideration, especially if you want to hear something where John's thinking by himself instead of thinking with the band. And it's just, it flows really well. I think it flowed very well for a non-concept album, which is something you don't see very often, which is nice. But other than that, any final remarks?
If you're worried about it being like a track by track, I very much did like the jumping through different sounds.
Yeah.
Because it does stay within like the bounds of an album, and it just kind of experiments with sound, which I really like personally. So
Yeah.
once again, if you're looking for something to listen to,
So I heard
recommend.
you say 7 out of 10. I was also thinking 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Is that something we're gonna have to change? Are we gonna after
I think-
talking about it?
I think I'm gonna bump mine up to like a 7.5, especially with it
7.5.
playing in the background. It's a very much, and I know this might sound like weird as a concept, and it doesn't make too much sense, but it's really good as like background.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'd say so.
And I don't mean that in like a disrespectful way, like, oh, throw it on the background, it sucks. It's like a good kind of, you can tune in when you want to, and you're gonna listen to something good. But if you just want to tune out for a little bit, talk, it's really nice. Just be chill in the back.
I would agree. I think it's really good. I'd agree with that background music as well. You know, it's just kind of a mellow, chill yourself out. You know, you don't have to pay too much attention, but if you want to, there's enough for you to pay attention to, which is really good. So, thinking 7.5 out of 10 on Imagine.
Bump it up
All
to
right.
7.5.
So, we're talking 7.5 on Imagine.
Yep.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about The Clash. We're going to take a little minute break here. I got to grab some water. Forgot to close my door and some people came home. It's all right. We didn't hear too much of that on the mic.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I've been listening. I heard a little bit. But when we're back, we'll have Asa Martinez in here to talk about The Clash. And then we're also going to have a really good, honest conversation about a 19-track album. So it's a long one. You know, It took me a while to listen to. But, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I thought it was pretty good. So we'll be right back. Bye. And then we're going to turn on the music. All right. So, hello everybody, we're back. We're going to talk about The Clash, London Calling. We have our expert in the field, Asa. He's here to talk
I'll give
about.
a little bit background. So, Connor was in the basement and he was telling me about his music podcast. And I had just listened to this album while I was reading Spider-Man comics. So I wasn't completely absorbed in it, but I did enjoy it while I was reading Spider-Man.
Okay.
So,
No, I know.
I might not recognize every song by the sound of it, but I mean there were a few standouts for me.
Okay. All right. That
I
works.
Didn't write it down.
That's fine. I didn't write it down. I know Jaden had some thoughts he wanted to share.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the beginning of the album.
London Calling.
London Calling. Might want to lean into the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it.
Pretty
But
good?
you liked it.
I liked
Okay.
it.
I thought it was a pretty good song. It was just kind of about like different ways the world was gonna end or could end. I kind of got. Not all of them like entirely true because it also talks about like zombies and stuff, but it's still like pretty good, a little groovy, you know. Kind of sets the tone for majority of the songs on the album.
So I enjoyed the fact that the album kind of played into the like the Elvis's first album, which was kind of nice. Asa pointed that out to me a while ago, that the album cover that we used was the album cover that they used was reminiscent of Elvis's first album cover. Now I'm gonna take a leave for a second. You can keep talking about the album. I have to go close my door.
All right.
Actually, never mind. I can't. The camera stand is in the door. I'd have to move the whole camera setup. It's all right. It's whatever.
It's chilling.
It's fine. We're chilling.
The song that's playing right now, I like this one too.
I think there was a lot of good
Glory,
songs.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
Wait, are we just gonna go down the list?
We can talk about what we liked,
go
what we didn't
wherever.
like. I mean, so you thought Death and Glory was good?
Oh yeah.
I thought it was really good. When I was listening to, I mean, there's 19 songs on this album. I mean, it's a large album. It's nothing to scoff at. But I think there was a lot of music on there that was a little underdeveloped, and then a lot of stuff that was developed really well. It was nice. Was there any negative aspects you saw, Jaden?
I found it really repetitive. At least to me, as someone who doesn't really enjoy this style of music too much, I was a lot quicker than I probably should have to be like, I'm kind of like done with this song and kind of wanted to move on and kind of push it off. But there are definitely some really good songs that kind of shone through that really kind of like murky, kind of just so whatever. And the album, one of them was Jimmy Jazz. I really like that one a lot. How it starts and kind of moves over from left ear to the right ear. I really like that.
Oh yeah.
And it's got a completely different sound with the like the jazz elements and stuff, which I really enjoyed. So
Yeah.
like with the song like that, I really enjoyed. But then a lot of the other ones, they're kind of just like so.
Yeah, I felt that I feel that repetitiveness. I think it was a little bit repetitive, but I think that's kind of part of it. I thought that was a little bit part of it. It felt like the roots that they were digging from were kind of coming from this blues, you know, from the beginning. Like I could feel the blues rhythms that were coming in, which was kind of nice, and it was reminiscent of like early rock and roll.
Yeah, very much so.
And then they kind of put a spin on it that I thought was really interesting, kind of very influential towards the rest of the punk genre. What do you think, Asa?
Oh yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I've listened to the Clash for a while, but right now I'm listening to this other band called The Jam.
Oh yeah.
And man, they do jam.
They do jam.
I like their music a lot.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, this was my first thing of the Clash that I listened to. So.
Oh yeah. Let's see. I've listened to a bit of their. I mean, I've listened to a couple albums, but like I have a hard time like. Sometimes I just listen to something and I move on. I don't like go too in depth with it. But I've never like been like I don't like this. I've liked pretty much everything I've listened to.
That's right.
So I was wondering, where does this album fall in Clash's lineup? Was it their first? Was it their second? It was their third. Their third studio album.
I'm like 90% sure it's their
90%
third.
sure.
90% sure.
92.
We'll get no
kinda
confirmation
interesting.
on that. We'll just take your word for
See,
it.
so that would have been mid 70s then.
There's 79.
79,
I
late
think.
70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right when the Wall came out, Pink Floyd reference. I think it's really interesting that there's just so much content on here. When I went to go listen to the album after deciding it would be one of the ones we were reviewing, I was very surprised that there was 19 songs, which, you know, in hindsight, after listening to it, I think that it was a little bit forgetful, some of the tracks, but there were others that I kind of had to go back and listen to again a second time just because they were really, really good. But the problem is that while I was listening to it, I wasn't running along with the track list because I didn't have it on CD or vinyl, so I didn't have a track list to go from. So while I was listening to it, I kind of, like, in my head, it was like, oh, that was a good song, but then in my mind, I didn't tie it to a name. So I kind of just heard it more as a full album.
I was very much listening to it on Spotify and had, like, the track list. I was following along with the lyrics, so I did have that opportunity to put song names to like the actual sound. I didn't because I forgot. But there are some that stood out, like Spanish Bombs and Jimmy Jazz, which really stood out and I really liked. But yeah, definitely like a lot of that like blending kind of together where it's more of an album. And I do think this album would have benefited a little bit more if they kind of cut it and focus more on the songs themselves instead of making it big.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that.
I went from Imagine and then was going to listen to this pretty much right after. I looked at the song list. I'm like, no, I'm going to give this its own day.
Yeah, give it
to
its own day.
To really kind of try and soak on all of the information.
I think it works really well as just some good, a good album to listen to when you're just
poolside.
Yeah,
I would say
poolside. I'd say it's something you can
pool
devote.
Table or like swimming pool.
Like swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
Swimming pool.
Swimming
it's
pool.
good to kind of get you a little bit pumped, get you thinking about some different topics of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a really good feel to it. I enjoyed it personally. There were some songs that were a little less than desirable, but for the most part, I think it worked really well.
Yeah, I very much liked it.
So
like,
let's
as an album and like kind of, but if I went individually, song by song, I didn't like this very much. But if I did as an album, I could very much see it on like a hot summer day. You're with like your family, just kind of chilling by the pool. Like this is what some of my grandpa would play.
So you didn't like the individual songs, but as a whole, you liked it?
Yeah, it worked really well as one big piece. Yeah.
Because if you were to play one of these songs out of context, I wouldn't like it. Unless if it's like, one of the better songs. But if you were to take a random song and just play it, I wouldn't enjoy it as much as if I sat down and just had this thing playing.
So let's do some closing remarks. Go through the table here. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it.
Did you have a certain out of 10 you wanted to give?
No, I don't really rate music.
Don't really rate it that.
No, I don't rate music like, because I don't know. I find that kind of hard to do. I'd probably say like I like this genre of music a lot, so as like part of this genre, I think it's like a really good album if you like this to listen to. My like songs I would listen to: Spanish Bombs, Death and Glory, and the closing track, Train. Wait, what is that one?
Train of Vain.
Train of Vain, yeah, that one. Those ones are the standouts for me. Lost in Supermarket, I like that one too.
Yeah, I liked Lost in Supermarket. That one was pretty good.
Those were the recommendations for me.
Yeah, recommended listen to. What do you think, Jaden?
Jimmy Jazz, best song in the album. Don't listen to what they say. Best song.
Best
it's fun.
song, Jimmy Jazz.
I didn't say I didn't like it, but
well,
best song. It's fun with your ears. Goes back and forth. Really fun. I wasn't the biggest fan. I honestly would give it a 4.5.
4.5.
Yeah,
it's like a classic.
Little less than average. That's interesting.
Because if I were to sit down and listen to this, it's just too long.
Okay.
So I feel like if they cut it down, I could give it, a higher rating. But I don't like this style of music too much, and it was just a lot of it. So having to sit down and listen to a lot of something that I don't enjoy particularly too much, it kind of just slowly started to drag it down. And then you'd have a few good songs that would bring it back up, and then it would start dragging down with the length.
I see. Okay. Well, it's an interesting opinion. Personally, I'd say that this album, I like where Ace is coming from with the not rating music. I think that makes a lot of sense. But
you can rate music. You don't have to copy me.
From a rating point of view, I think that I'd probably give it an above average score. Probably a little bit better than some other albums I've listened to. It just has, like Ace has said, it's a classic, and I kind of give it that leeway. I'd probably put it at 6.5. That's what I'm thinking.
That's
I wouldn't.
fair.
I mean, as much as I enjoyed Imagine, threw that up at a 7.5. I think that this would be a 6.5 just because I'm not a huge punk fan. If you are a punk fan, if you enjoy the genre, this is a must listen to.
Yeah, this is a good album.
This is an album that I 100% guarantee that you will like.
Because like With a 4.5, five's like average. Like you didn't like it, you didn't dislike it. With my 4.5, I kind of just like, I didn't really like it. There's more that I dislike than like. So I
see.
couldn't put it middle of the road, so I had to.
Okay. All right. I see. All right. Well, I think that just about does it for.
What's next? Blue album?
Yeah. What? No, we're not listening to the
Blue
Blue album.
album's next, guys.
No, we're not listening to the Blue
Blue
album.
I
album's
think
next.
I think animals.
I think we're gonna
No.
review
Sneak
animals.
peek animals.
Sneak peek
Well,
animals.
I mean, you can't do Blue Album and Animals in the same one because Blue Album would just destroy. And no, people would skip
Destroy
over
my
the animals.
brains
People
there.
You know, I think. Okay, I like
destroy
where
your
Ace
brains
is,
of how awesome it is.
I like where Ace is coming from. Next time on the podcast, be on the lookout for the next one. We're gonna be looking at animals, and we're gonna be looking at Weezer's Blue album. Me and
and their
Jaden-
white album and their red
No,
album.
No.
And the black
no,
album.
We'll do one.
Definitely not.
One and done. Unless if we get paid.
Green album.
Unless we get.
Weezer would have to personally pay us to listen to more of their
Okay,
music.
human.
Well, you can kind of see where this review is going to be going. So we're going to be listening to Pink Floyd's Animals. We're going to be listening to Weezer's Blue album.
Wonder who the
On the
guest
next
will be
show,
for that one.
yeah, I wonder who the guest is going to be for that
Little
one.
guy named R.J. Weirs.
It'll be R.J. Weirs. He'll be in on that album, and we're gonna piece this all together. We'll be seeing you later. Bye bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, have a great time. It's gonna be real fun. So we'll see you later. See you next time.